artists and art enthusiasts. Welcome to Where 2D and 3D Meet.
A podcast about art, what it is and what it means to us.
I'm Kelli Collins. I have a BFA in 2D Media.
And I'm Jenna Coffin. I have a BFA in Sculpture.
Welcome, one and all, to the first in our artist series. Today, we're going to be talking about the fearless, the comical, the risqué, the talented radical, Nicole Eisenman. Eisenman is a multifaceted artist working in many mediums, but most recognized as a painter and sculptor.
Her work is in museums and other notable locations around the world, and she is hailed for restoring the representation of the human form, a cultural significance that had waned during the ascendancy of abstraction in the 20th century, by the MacArthur Foundation.
Eisenman is a gender-fluid lesbian who uses she, her, and they-them pronouns. She has stated, quote, "I'm gender-fluid, but I use the she pronoun. I believe in the radicality of stretching the definition of what she is."
At the time of this recording, Eisenman is 57 years old and living in Brooklyn, New York as a successful artist. But where did she start out? She was born in 1965 in Verdun, France, and she's of German Jewish descent. In 1970, her family moved to Scarsdale, New York, and in 1987, she obtained her BFA in painting from the Rhode Island School of Design.
After getting out of school, she moved to New York to begin her art career. Eisenman earned several awards during the 90s, including the Louis Comfort Tiffany Grant in 95 and the Guggenheim Fellowship in 96.
By the 2000s, she was in solo shows in both Europe and the US, but recognition really hit in 2015 when she was the recipient of the MacArthur Fellowship, nicknamed the Genius Grant. The Genius Grant offers a stipend of $625,000 paid out over 5 years with absolutely no strings attached. Over her career, she has received many awards and grants, too many to list here, really.
Her paintings and sculptures were included in the 2017 Sculptor Project Munster in Germany, the 2019 Whitney Biennial, and the 2019 Venice Biennale, which is where I first saw her work. She has had many solo exhibitions across the world, including in Germany, the Netherlands, France, and Switzerland, along with many showings across the U.S. She was also recently in the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth, Texas, in their Women Painting Women exhibition, which we had planned on going to, but unfortunately couldn't make it happen.
Yeah, I really wanted to go to that. Oh well. Although she calls herself a sculptor and painter, she has made works in many different mediums, including drawings, film, etchings, lithography, monotypes, and woodcuts.
Eisenman's work has been influenced by many different past artists. She's mentioned that she admires artist Sigmar Polk, a German painter whose work has been described as European pop, and Julian Schnabel, an American painter who combines sculptural elements into his paintings.
Eisenman portrays accessible narratives about life and the struggles therein. Eisenman likes to merge themes of the present with motifs of the past, including a gesture she describes as shoulders curled in and our eyes reverently looking down, which, as remarked by the New Yorker's art critic Peter Sheldall, is a pose familiar from classical paintings of religious piety reenacted whenever we check our phones.
Most of her work is focused on the figure. When asked in an interview for the MacArthur Grant about her work, she stated, "I draw from the world around me, what I know. I pull my friends and family into my paintings. I paint the figure because I know the world through my body, and I understand my desires and my anxieties through my body, and the desires and anxieties of our culture. I think the body can hold so much. It can be a site for just exploring the paint in, or it can hold metaphorical and allegorical meanings. It's just wide open."
The themes in many of Eisenman's work include identity, anxiety, politics, sexuality, and even comedy. She doesn't shy away from uncomfortable scenes or topics. Nay, you could say she revels in it. The following pieces are some of our favorites that we want to share our thoughts on.
The first painting that I want to share is Weeks on the Train, made in 2015. I got to see this at the Venice Biennale in 2019. It conveys a sense of loneliness that is both present time and yet timeless. The slouched figure and the cat in the carrier are both rendered meticulously, while the caricature of two fellow passengers are looking out the window. The windows are rendered in such a way that your point of view is looking down at the figures, which keeps you from inserting yourself into the painting, emphasizing the sense of loneliness. It's a very quiet painting. The slouch figure seems disconnected from the world in a melancholic fashion, like they're just too tired to connect to anything anymore. This is even more emphasized by the fact that their clothes are kind of not as on as you would normally put yourself on. You can kind of see their belly and such from the pants sagging, and
they're kind of rumpled.
Yeah, kind of rumpled.
Very realistic for traveling, I feel.
For sure.
Eisenman's work is very strange to me, considering the way that she renders the different figures in the paintings. So, like, there's all these tiny lines that make up the grate or the screen on the cat carrier, and there's all this really good shading everywhere on the slouched figure, and then you get to the one in the foreground with bright red headphones and this gigantic eyeball. What is going on?
Yeah, I'm really not sure on. It's very different to have such stylistic changes inside the same painting, with everything like the seats that the figures are sitting in are just meticulously taken care of, and yet you have this one figure that's just it seems like copy pasted from a different painting.
Mm-hmm. Like a different artist even.
A different artist even, yeah. It's very strange, but it kind of almost emphasizes to me, at least in this painting, the loneliness, because like the other figures are just so different from the main figure of the painting that it just seems even more disconnected.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now on to Fountain. It's actually called, there's 3 versions. The first is called Sketch for Fountain, and it was installed at Sculptor Project Munster, an art show in Germany. This version of the piece includes 5 figures, 3 in plaster, 2 in bronze, all of them relaxing around a rectangular pool in different poses. The second version is called Grouping of Works from Fountain. It was installed at 401 Park in Boston's Fenway neighborhood. It still features the pool, but only 3 of the figures from the original, all in bronze. The third version is also called Sketch for Fountain, and it includes all 5 figures from the original sketch, all in bronze, installed around a pool at the Nasher Sculpture Center. Eisenman's figure sculptures show her distinct style just as well as her paintings. The figures have varying treatments when it comes to detail, some having noses or eyes, others with blank faces but tousled hair. Their hands are large with round fingers. Their poses are expressive, this one reclining with their beer, that one leaning back on their elbows, this one taking a nap. They invite you to come relax and play in the water with them. There's a light-hearted aspect of them. Mushrooms and insects are sculpted onto them. The water spouts from their legs, which are also textured differently, evoking leg hair. When asked about these figures by Arthur Pena in an interview for the Nasher Sculpture Center, Eisenman replied, "I think there's this idea I have of these figures where they just arrived out of the woods, walked over, found this body of water, and plopped themselves down. It's a good narrative to think of them having that kind of agency."
Yeah, so this is probably one of my least favorite of the ones we're going to talk about.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess I'm just not as into the narrative as the other ones. Every kind of painting or sculpture or piece of art she does just seems to have a story to it, and I guess just some sculptures walking out of the woods and plopping themselves down to have a nap or whatever isn't as, maybe it's because I don't like outdoors and stuff, so I don't really connect with the outdoorsy sculptures.
Yeah. Especially the version of this that was installed in Boston. It seems like Eisenman wants them to like I said, invite people to come play. The fountain is open for people to walk around in, and she really wants, like, kids to go in and play with them and play around in the water, splash around, just enjoy themselves. So it's like an invitation.
Ah, I see. So maybe I just I'm just not a person that likes getting invited to splash around in a pool with a bunch of strange sculptures. Strangers, strange sculptures, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the next one that we want to talk about is a painting that I also got to see in the Venice Biennale of 2019, and that's Heading Down River on the USSJ Bone in the Ass. And she made this in 2017.
Great title.
It's an absolutely great title for an absolutely amazing painting. If ever there was a painting to depict the trajectory of a country after the 2016 elections, I feel like this is the one. She's not afraid to kind of really delve deep into politics. Nothing seems to be too risqué or whatever for her to cover in as far as themes go. And so this painting really, like, especially when I heard that it was made in 2017, I'm like, oh, that's what this is about.
It suddenly makes
sense. The pea soup-colored river is reminiscent of a swamp and thus dirty politicians. The barren wasteland of the banks are grim reminders of the probable future of our planet. And the USSJ Bone in the Ass is a jawbone of a donkey that makes it obvious that Democrats are not exempt from the criticism. The causes are left a bit more ambiguous, but the boat writer's nonchalance about the whole thing makes them seem stupid or uncaring. As Catherine Taft from the Art Forum states about the piece, it depicts a place where democracy goes to die. And I just could not say it better myself.
It was definitely really discouraging to have those results from 2016. And I definitely made a lot of art during that time that was about the climate and things going downhill or down a waterfall in this case.
Did you notice the little tiny squirrel that is riding its own little boat?
Oh my gosh. Tiny squirrel. It needs a bigger boat,
it needs
for
a
sure.
bigger boat. It's not going to help it. It's headed to a waterfall of doom.
Yeah. The negative space in the sail is interesting.
Yeah, the ripped sail.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like just this big, giant white swath of cloth that's got a gigantic hole in it. But the fact that that's like
wouldn't help you steer much.
No,
anyway.
but the fact that it's like centerized in the painting almost is interesting.
And such strong contrast between the black sky and the white sail.
Yeah. Definitely. And she puts in the foreground a like dead tree that like covers up some of the figures, because there's a pasty sailor and a kind of hidden
like a businessman kind of
politician kind of person. I'm assuming politician or businessman, because based just on the rest of the painting and the kind of message she's trying to send. So this is definitely one of my favorite works of hers.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah, she does not shy away from intense.
Okay. Next we have Love or Generosity, installed in 2020 at the new courthouse in Amsterdam. Love or Generosity is much larger than Eisenman's other figures, which are only slightly larger than real life. This one is 5 meters tall, over 16 feet. But its scale is actually larger than that because of the figure's bent posture. If they stood upright, they would be around 10 meters tall, or almost 33 feet. This puts the figure more in the scale of the tall courthouse building, but their bent posture brings them down to our level to interact with us, and in fact, the hand they hold out is right at eye level, allowing us to see what's offered. They hold out an owl for wisdom, an acorn for growth, and an arrow for true aim. The playfulness of her figurative form extends to this piece. The figure sports oversized yellow hiking boots and black tracksuit pants, with a bare top, ruffled hair, and the signature large rounded hands and nose. An article about the piece says, Eisenman clearly thinks of her giants as having a real presence in the world, holders of palpable energy with the potential to change an atmosphere, and she's talked about sculpture's capacity to work below the neck, working viscerally to prompt involuntary, instinctual reactions. She describes the figures fondly as the scruffy, bohemian great-great-grandchildren of Greco-Roman gods. I love that. And she is explicit about their undercutting of classical ideals. The original forms are all athletic and gorgeous and smooth and white, which seems like something that needs to be taken down a notch. This new generation is a utopian one, contentedly imperfect, free from the disciplining of gender and social decorum. Hairy legs, pot-bellies, postures heedless of propriety, free also from ceaseless striving and the urgencies of getting on. They model an alternative, more spacious way of life, with time for daydreaming and contemplation. So the posture, it's sticking its bum in the air, not quite at the building, but near it, sure.
Kind of at the building.
Uh-huh.
So I really actually like this piece a lot. I think it's interesting the way that it, instead of kneeling down to your level, bends over to your level. Almost in like a bow kind of way. And
it definitely feels like if there was a person that was this tall and they wanted to show you something, this is how they would do it. It feels like a giant showing you this owl that they found.
But at the same time, it's like, it feels almost, if you weren't right next to it, like looking at pictures of it, it's hard to really feel like it's giant. Because the way it's got just these work boots and these track pants, like, just feels like that's not really how gigantic sculptures are generally made. Like,
right.
So it feels more personable, relatable than the normal giant sculptures you usually see.
Where they're looking off into the distance.
And they're like aloof and you know,
important looking clothing.
And they're definitely different from you. Like, there's a distance between you and the figure. I think it's...
Yeah, this isn't on a podium or anything. It's right on the ground where you're walking.
I think that's really important that we also talk about the fact that the figure is this darker colored skin tone.
Yes.
And I don't get the feeling like that's just because of the medium, because there's other colors involved with the black track pants and the light tan boots. So
right.
I really feel like this is like a person of color instead of a white person that just so happens to be made in bronze.
Right. I really like how she added the color on the clothing to kind of bring that forward. Because white people tend to think of themselves as the default. And so even if a sculpture is in a different color, we can easily replace our own skin tone onto that in our mind's eye. But because he has these black pants and his skin, well, I guess because they have these black pants and their skin color is so close to it, it definitely reads as a person of color, and I agree. I really, really like that.
And then with it being at a courthouse, I think those objects in the hand are really, like, pointed to be, like, reminders for the people that work here that, you know, this isn't just a place for punishment.
Yeah, it's justice, right?
Yeah, that one, Love and Generosity, is probably one of my favorite of her sculptures. Like, I really like it. So, the last painting I want to talk about is called The Triumph of Poverty. It's the only one that I haven't seen in person, but it's still one of my favorite pieces, and I felt like I should mention it. So it's a procession of ragged people alongside a literally ass-backwards man shuffling almost lifelessly across this painting, while a group of miniature figures lifted directly from Peter Bruegel's 1568 painting, The Blind Leading the Blind, are pulled along by a string held by this ass-backwards man, while another procession of rats are around this ass-backwards man's feet. So the ass-backwards man is also the only one that's in, like, nicer clothing. He's wearing, like, a rumpled tuxedo, and his pants are down around his ankles. So you can see that his ass is backwards. And he has a top hat, where everybody else is wearing clothes that are definitely, or no clothes, of what you would wear for working class or, you know, poverty-driven, generally speaking, people. There's one guy that literally has his pockets turned inside out.
Yeah, I was just seeing that.
And, like, the figure in the car is, like, actually a patchwork. Like, they have stitches in their skin. It's quite interesting, to see the variety of different figures and what they aren't wearing. The different...
Again, with the different treatment of the figures between each other, some have a lot of detail, some look really, really sketchy, like they were drawn in with crayon.
Mm-hmm. The different...
And their colors vary wildly.
Yeah, different skin tones from blue to red, green, brown, and everything in between. Like, there's just so much variety with the figures, and yeah, it's like, one is a little kid that's just completely, like, golden yellow that just almost reminds me of, like, a statue, like a bronze statue
holding a bowl.
Yep, like the old please can I have some more, sir? Kind of thing. So to me, the piece is seems to be a lot about the poverty, those that live in poverty, following along with many of those in poverty, following along with people and ideals that just doesn't make any sense. This was made in 2009, so it was directly after the 2008 financial recession. The recession, the financial breakdown of our financial institutions, and so to me, the man in the trench coat, or in the ass backwards man is definitely either a politician or a banker, and the rats around his feet kind of show how he's a rat. Get it? So
it's interesting that he has the string that's the blind leading the blind, so he's definitely part of the blind in that metaphor.
Yeah. Not
that I like that metaphor, but people know what it means.
Yeah, it's definitely, like, a known metaphor, so it's easy. It's accessible. It's easy for people to pick that out. So this leaves them to trudge forever forward to nowhere, and in some cases the exact opposite to where they need to go. And they're all trudging in front of this, like, very suburban, normal-looking house. So it's kind of like one of those things of it's happening in your own front yard kind of thought to me.
It looks like there's, in the car, in the back seat, it looks like there's, like, fog on the window with some words written on it. I wish I knew what that said.
Take the something.
Maybe we can find that out. We'll put it on the Patreon if we figure it out.
Yeah. If we happen to figure out
If you know what it says, put it in the comments, please.
Put it in the comments. If you've seen this painting before and you know what it says. But I can see it says take, and then TH, I think. So take the something.
The one that stands out a lot to me is the male figure on the left with the blue beard.
Yeah, he looks so just done with life. Like, he's just looking
He's still going with the procession, but
he's looking directly down at the ground.
Yeah.
It's this one's a rough one.
So this next piece is called Maker's Muck 2022. All of Eisenman's work rewards long looking. The more time you spend looking at the piece, the more you see. They sometimes seem frenetic on the surface, with so much going on, it seems like static. As I continue to look, I can pick out details, see more of what they're trying to say. After learning about her works for this episode, I was rewarded for my efforts by the piece Maker's Muck, the centerpiece of her untitled show at Hauser and Wirth Gallery in New York. In the Maker's Muck, I spotted a small version of her piece Love or Generosity, possibly her maquette for it. A figure from Procession, another large-scale figure work, and another from her Fountain series. You can definitely describe this as a mixed media work, as there are around 100 kinds of materials used, including plaster, bronze, fired clay, unfired clay, bamboo skewers, vinyl stickers, crocheted rug, grass, corn, heat lamp bulb, and an AM/FM radio, just to name a few. All of Maker's Muck is exciting to me, probably because of my own love of art and art making and getting deep into the art materials. The pottery wheel in the middle of the piece is functioning, and it spins around and around. The fingers of the plaster figure in the middle are free moving and slide along the surface just like they do in real life when you're working with clay. This piece, more than any other I looked at, helped me understand and relate to the artist. Before, I wondered why she filled her pieces with so many details, so many faces and figures in each one, such a variety of ways of expressing the figure between pieces but also within the same piece. In Maker's Muck, the chaos suddenly makes sense to me, and I immediately want to look longer, see more in this piece, and go back to the other ones I saw previously.
Yeah, I really think this piece is interesting in the way it's like a collage of her works, but as like 3D pieces. So it really showcases her ability to bring 2D ways of doing and thinking about things into a 3D space.
Yeah, I agree. And the same is true vice versa as well. Her understanding of texture and form and space, wink wink episode 3, really come out in her paintings as well, like we were talking about with the train chairs.
Yeah, this piece is really just a lot. There's so much going on. It does remind me of a lot of some of her more figure-full paintings, like the Triumph of Poverty had a lot of figures in it.
Beer Garden.
Yep. So it's another one of those pieces that you really have to kind of pick apart to like understand what's going on, but at the same time you can get a surface level like reading of like, wow, that's a lot going on, and
it's a lot of stuff.
That's a lot of art. So I really think this is an interesting installation. The way that it's moving is like new and different from her other pieces. My first thought was, I wonder how they keep the unfired clay from drying out.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could see this in person.
Like, did they have like the gallery person occasionally pour water over the clay?
Or mist it or something.
Yeah.
I like how it feels like a messy artist studio, even though it's not just like, here's all of my art tools, you know? Like, there are tools in there, but it's not like, this is my paintbrush, and this is my clay sculpting tool, and this is my pottery wheel, and this is my... There is the pottery wheel there, but there's, like, an emphasis on the works and these other weird shapes, rather than just a pile of material and tools.
Kind of like it's showcasing her studio by also showcasing her work.
It kind of feels like the inside of her mind.
Ooh, that's poetic.
Yeah, which, you know, she is.
She is very poetic. We've only scratched the surface here, so please check out the links in the description and check out more of her work. If you go on our Patreon, we have research stuff we did that has a bit more
This artist is so crazily prolific. It was a bit overwhelming to try and narrow down what to talk about here. Just as an aside, for a month-long residency she did in London in 2013, hilariously titled, "'Tis but a scratch, your arm's off." No, it isn't. For that residency, she made 16 life-size plaster figures. That's one full-size plaster sculpture every 2 days. Absolutely insane. I also found a quote from her about that show, and she says, "I'm thinking about touch and desire as I'm making the work. The way the material feels, the temperature of the body, the delicacy and strength. There's something very sensuous about this material, these bodies, the act of rubbing, and the visceral sexiness of touch and texture, combined with the weight of the plaster and the mysterious heat it generates. It's dreamy work." Wow, she's so bold and expressive. I love this description of working with plaster figures. She says things that I think, but I'm too scared to say out loud.
For me, she says things that I just can't seem to articulate. She has a very blunt but poetic way of speaking about her art that I admire a great deal. Speaking about one's art is one of the things I really struggle with, and I hope that by the time I'm Eisenman's age, I'd be at least half as good at it as she is. We had a hard time not just putting in all the quotes we found because they were all really great.
Yeah, yeah, there will be a ton more links available in the research document on Patreon if you're interested.
That's the end of this episode. Stick around until the end for a sneak preview of the next Patreon exclusive episode. I'm Jenna Coffin.
And I'm Kelli Collins. Our amazing music and the editing for the podcast are done by Cadence of the Blade. You can find him on Twitch at twitch.tv/Cadence of the Blade.
If you'd like to contact us, you can email us at where2dand3dmeet@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook. If you'd like to see our artwork, you can find me at withkoji.com/@Jenna_Coffin.
And you can find me at kellykcollins.com. This podcast is brought to you by our patrons. Without our patrons, we wouldn't be here, so thank you to our Medici family members, Eric Huntsman and Norman Beverstock.
If you'd like to support us too, head over to patreon.com/where2d and3dmeet, where you can get early access to episodes, join our Discord server for art discussions with us, and get exclusive episodes. Links can be found in the description below.
Thank you to all of you for listening. We hope you'll join us next episode, where 2D and 3D meet. So I saw this meme a while ago, and it said, "I wonder if my ancestors are smiling upon me sometimes." Somebody replied, "You, making a little thing with clay,
It's so
the
weird.
ghost of Australopithecus. Yes, 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 yes." And then somebody else replies, "Mesopotamian souls going apeshit and cheering in the netherworld. Clay, 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 clay."
That's how I feel about clay, for sure.